put a smile on your face.
Welcome to Watch Mojo's Whatever Happened To. And today, we're looking at musical artists who went from topping the charts to vanishing from the public eye, or at least mega popularity. Number 10. Roux. Roux's self-titled album won the Grammy for Best Electronic Dance Album at the 53rd Annual Ceremony in 2011. A year later, the band was a shadow of its former self. The name Roux was still around, but what was once the duo of Ellie Jackson and Ben Langmaid became just Jackson when Langmaid left the group in 2012. The latter had been a songwriter and producer for the group, while Jackson also served as a songwriter, but also its lead singer. The new Roux, with Jackson as the sole member, put out 2 albums after 2012. Number 9. B.o.B. Did you know this rapper released albums in 2018, 2020, and 2022? Most audiences didn't notice, which would have seemed like an impossibility when B.o.B's career first took off. In 2010, he put out his first studio album and hit the top of the US Billboard 200 chart and saw 3 singles reach the top 10 as well. Fueled by commercial success and media buzz, he released 2 more LPs in the next 3 years. But as fast as he was everywhere, he just as quickly disappeared from pop music relevance. Number 8. Jewel. Between 1995 and 2008, Jewel released 6 studio albums, not including her holiday collection. Every one of them reached the top 10 on the Billboard 200 chart. While mostly a folk artist, Jewel did depart from her genre of choice with her turn towards pop in 2003's 03-04 and the country project Perfectly Clear in 2008. After that period of success, she continued working and making music, including another holiday album, 2 records for children, and several studio albums. But none of those later projects have found the broad acclaim she enjoyed at the turn of the century. Number 7. Natalie IM Brua. After her multi-platinum debut album, Left of the Middle, Natalie Imbruglia shot into pop stardom on the rocket ship that was torn. The releases earned Imbruglia multiple Grammy nominations, but it wouldn't sustain her for very long. While that first album sold more than 7 million copies, her next 5 records combined sold just 3 million copies globally. However, Imbruglia popped back onto the scene across the pond after a winning stint on the UK version of The Masked Singer. Her triumph as Panda may have contributed to the relative success of her 2021 album, Firebird. Number 6. Vitamin C. Doctors are always telling us to take vitamin C, but for a few years in the late 90s and early 2000s, we couldn't avoid the stuff, even if we wanted to. Colleen Ann Fitzpatrick was relatively unknown until 1998, when she took on the stage name Vitamin C and released her self-titled album the next year. It went platinum, and she wasn't unknown anymore. In 2001, she released a second, less successful album, and that was that. But while C disappeared from pop's public view, she moved behind the scenes. She's written and produced songs, worked as a VP of music at Nickelodeon, and joined Netflix as a music executive. Number 5. CeeLo Green. For a time in the 2000s and 2010s, it felt like CeeLo Green was the map. As one half of Gnarls Barkley, Green saw mega success with the 2006 song Crazy. A few years later, he released his 3rd solo album as a solo artist, The Lady Killer. The first single off that record may have had a crude title, but that didn't stop it from going 7 times platinum in the US. Green left his very visible gig as a coach on The Voice at the end of 2013, and since then has stayed mostly out of the charts. Number 4. Michelle Branch. This talented singer-songwriter had a brief moment of pop stardom at the turn of the 21st century. In 2001 and 2003, Michelle Branch released 2 platinum-selling albums, The Spirit Room and Hotel Paper. The latter rose as high as 2nd on the Billboard 200. But as everywhere as she was for those first few years, the pop-rock version of Branch that rose to popularity practically vanished for over a decade. Yes, she did have a Grammy-nominated song in 2006 as part of the country duo The Wreckers, but it would take another 11 years for Branch to release her 4th album as a solo artist, and 5 more years to release her 5th. Number 3. Taio Cruz. Here's one artist that definitely experienced the highs and lows of the music world. While Taio Cruz's first album did alright, his sophomore effort, Rockstar, took Cruz to the peak of pop. The record made it to 8th place on the Billboard 200 and spawned 2 top 5 singles, Break Your Heart and Dynamite.
Like it's dynamite.
In subsequent years, he recorded Telling the World for the animated film Rio and was credited as a co-writer on David Guetta's hit track Without You. During his peak popularity, Cruz made a couple attempts at starting a fashion brand, but years later, the business appeared dead. His music releases have been similarly sparse. Number 2. Leanne Rymes. At age 13, Leanne Rymes jumped onto the pop star map with Blue. The album not only hit number 1 on the country album charts, but rose to 3 on the Billboard 200. Her next 3 albums all broke the top 10, and Rymes held her own in terms of sales in the 90s. But she wasn't done. In 2005 and 2007, 2 more of her albums cracked the top 5. Although she continued to see success on the country charts in the 2010s, her impact on a wider audience wasn't the same. Instead, most of the pop culture talk surrounding Rymes in that time was in regards to her affair with and subsequent marriage to actor Eddie Cibrian. Number 1. Alanis Morisette. Back in the mid-90s, if you had one hand in your pocket, the other one was probably holding an Alanis Morisette CD. The Canadian singer-songwriter released 2 albums in the early 90s, but it was her 1995 record, Jagged Little Pill, that became a pop music phenomenon. The album was nominated for 9 Grammys, taking home 5, after Jagged Little Pill sold over 33 million copies around the world. Her next 2 releases weren't as big, but they both still found themselves atop the Billboard 200 chart. But you ought to know that Morissette only released 3 albums from 2012 to 2022, with diminishing commercial returns.